Between Iceland and Norway, there is a stretch of ocean that most travelers pass over without a second thought. From 30,000 feet above, it looks like nothing more than empty water. A vast, quiet part of the North Atlantic. Planes cross this sky every day. Thousands of passengers sit beside their windows, watching clouds drift slowly beneath them. And almost none of them realize that just below those clouds, something extraordinary exists. A scattered chain of islands rising sharply from the sea. Places where cliffs fall straight into the ocean, where waterfalls disappear into the wind, and where villages sit quietly between mountains and mist. For centuries, these islands remained isolated from the rest of the world, not because they were impossible to reach, but because few people ever had a reason to look for them. And maybe that was their greatest protection, because in a world that moves faster every year, places that remain quiet are becoming harder to find. But here in the North Atlantic, time seems to move differently. The wind still shapes the land. The sea still decides the rhythm of life, and the landscape feels less like Europe and more like something from another world. These are the Faroe Islands. At first glance, the islands feel almost unreal. Mountains rise suddenly from the ocean, their slopes covered in deep green grass that seems to glow beneath the shifting light. Massive cliffs stand guard along the coastline, some of the tallest in Europe, dropping hundreds of meters into the restless Atlantic below. And everywhere you look, water is moving. Streams rush through valleys. Mist drifts across mountain ridges. And waterfalls spill endlessly toward the sea. Some of them fall so close to the edge of the cliffs that strong winds carry the water sideways, turning it into floating clouds. Standing here, it becomes difficult to tell where the land ends and where the sky begins. Despite the dramatic landscapes, life on these islands has always been quiet. Small villages are scattered between the mountains, each one connected by narrow roads that twist through tunnels and along the coast. Colorful houses sit close together, often with grass growing on their rooftops to protect them from the harsh North Atlantic weather. For generations, the people who lived here depended on the sea. Fishing boats left the harbors before sunrise, returning later in the day with the ocean's unpredictable gifts. The wind shaped daily life. The tides set the schedule, and the land demanded patience. There were no massive cities here, no crowded skylines, just small communities learning to live beside powerful nature. But the Faroe Islands hold another quiet secret. There are more sheep here than people. Nearly every hillside is dotted with them, wandering freely across the vast green landscapes. For centuries, sheep farming helped sustain life here, providing wool, food, and trade. In fact, the name Faroe itself is believed to come from an Old Norse phrase meaning sheep islands. It's a reminder that these lands were never meant for large civilizations. They were meant for balance between animals, people, and the wild forces of nature. What makes the Faroe Islands so unusual is how untouched they still feel. In many parts of the world, beautiful landscapes quickly become crowded destinations. Roads expand, hotels appear, tour buses arrive, and slowly, the quiet disappears. But here, the islands resisted that transformation for a long time. Their location in the remote North Atlantic kept them hidden from mass tourism. Even today, reaching the islands requires intention. Flights are limited, weather changes quickly, and the rugged terrain demands respect. These natural barriers acted like a shield, protecting the islands from the rush of the modern world. Yet even places this remote cannot remain invisible forever. In recent years, travelers searching for something different began discovering the Faroe Islands. Photographers arrived first, drawn by the dramatic cliffs, the shifting fog, and the surreal landscapes. Images of towering sea stacks, lonely lighthouses, and waterfalls plunging into the ocean began spreading across the internet. Suddenly, people around the world were seeing these islands for the first time, and curiosity started growing. But the Faroe Islands are not a place that reveals themselves quickly. The weather changes constantly. One moment, sunlight breaks through the clouds, and the entire landscape glows green. The next, thick fog rolls in from the sea and everything disappears into silence. Storms can arrive without warning. Winds can sweep across the cliffs with incredible force. Here, nature always reminds visitors who truly controls the environment. And maybe that unpredictability is exactly what keeps the islands so special. Because when nature stays powerful, people tend to move more carefully. Standing on the edge of one of these cliffs, looking out across the endless Atlantic, it becomes clear why places like this feel so different. There are no endless crowds, no towering hotels, no neon lights breaking the darkness, just the sound of wind moving across the grass and waves crashing far below. Moments like this create a rare kind of silence, the kind that modern life almost never allows. And in that silence, something unusual happens. You begin to notice the world again. Maybe that is the real secret of the Faroe Islands. Not just their dramatic landscapes or their remote location, but the way they slow everything down. In a world where most places are constantly competing for attention, these islands seem content to remain quiet. They don't try to impress visitors. They simply exist, unchanged, unbothered, waiting patiently in the middle of the North Atlantic. And perhaps that's why so many travelers still fly over this ocean without realizing what lies below. Because the Faroe Islands have never tried to be discovered. They never asked to become famous. They simply remained here, between the wind and the sea, moving at their own pace. A reminder that even in the modern world, there are still places where nature writes the story, and where the loudest thing you can hear is the sound of the earth itself. If you ever find yourself flying between Iceland and Norway, look carefully out your window, because somewhere beneath those clouds, hidden in the shifting North Atlantic mist, you might just catch a glimpse of Europe's quietest islands, the Faroe Islands, a place most tourists never see.